Welcome to CompTIA Security Plus Objective 1.1, Security Controls. This is the foundation of everything we do in Security Plus. If you master this objective, you will answer 3 to 4 extra questions correctly on every domain, because controls show up everywhere. We will break this down in the exact same visual style you liked. Clear icons, real-world examples, and exam-focused insights at the bottom of every slide. Let's dive deep. By the end of this 30-minute deep dive, you will be able to do 4 things. First, classify any security measure by how it's implemented. Is it technical, managerial, operational, or physical? Second, classify it by why it exists. Is it preventive, detective, deterrent, corrective, compensating, or directive? Third, and this is critical for the exam, spot the trap where CompTIA asks for 2 labels for one scenario. And fourth, apply our master matrix to any scenario they throw at you. This is not memorization, this is understanding. So what is a security control? Think of it as any safeguard or countermeasure you put in place to protect confidentiality, integrity, and availability, the CIA triad, and to reduce risk. If you have a threat, like a hacker, exploiting a vulnerability, like an open port, a control is what breaks that chain. On the exam, they will use the words control, safeguard, and countermeasure interchangeably. They mean the same thing. If you see any of those 3 words, think, what type of control are they describing? CompTIA tests controls in 2 completely different ways, and you must know both. First, how is the control implemented? Is it a piece of technology, a management policy, an operational process done by people, or a physical thing you can touch? Second, why does it exist? What is its purpose in the security timeline? Does it stop something before it happens, discourage someone, detect it after, or fix it? Every single control can be labeled both ways. A firewall is technical by implementation and preventive by purpose. A security guard is physical and operational and can be preventive, deterrent, and detective all at once. This dual labeling is where they trick you. Let's start with technical controls. These are the hardware and software that do the security work automatically. If it runs on a chip or in code, it's technical. Firewalls that block traffic, encryption that scrambles data, antivirus that quarantines malware, multi-factor authentication apps that verify identity, intrusion detection systems that sniff packets, data loss prevention that blocks social security numbers from leaving via email. These are your workhorses. On the exam, if they mention a tool, a software, an appliance, a script, answer technical control. Let's make this concrete with exam examples. Pure 1.1 focus. No mixing. A next-generation firewall that blocks malicious IPs, technical and preventative. Full disk encryption that protects a stolen laptop, technical and preventative. EDR that detects malware behavior on a laptop and isolates it, technical, detective, and corrective. A SIEM that aggregates logs and alerts on impossible travel, technical and detective. Password managers and phishing-resistant MFA, like FIDO2, those are technical controls that are preventative. When you see FIDO2, think technical, preventative, and phishing resistant. This is pure security controls classification, not other domains. Next, managerial controls. These are the policies, procedures, and governance that management creates to run the security program. They don't directly block an attacker. They tell people and technology what to do. Security policies, standard operating procedures, acceptable use policy, risk assessments, strategic planning, security awareness training program design. If it is a document, a plan, a policy written by management, it's managerial. Exam trick. A written policy itself is managerial, but the technology that enforces it is technical. So the policy that says must use MFA is managerial. The MFA app that enforces it is technical. Here are the classics they will test. Acceptable use policy that tells users they can't use company email for personal use. Information security policy that defines who can access what. Business continuity and disaster recovery plans. Incident response plan, the step-by-step playbook. The risk register, where you track all risks. vendor risk assessment questionnaires. And notice, the risk appetite, how much risk the company is willing to accept, is defined by executive management. That's pure managerial. If the scenario says executives decided to accept the risk, that's managerial, risk acceptance strategy. Third category, operational controls. These are the day-to-day activities done by people to keep security working. If technical is the tool and managerial is the rule, operational is the human doing the work. Security awareness training delivery, background checks for new hires, running incident response drills, managing configurations, performing log reviews, conducting security audits. Think people and process. Exam insight. Many controls are both operational and another type. A security guard is operational and physical. Real examples. HR running a background check before hiring. Operational and preventative. The SOC analyst reviewing SIEM alerts every morning. Operational and detective. The team running a tabletop exercise to practice ransomware response. Operational and preventative. User reporting a phishing email via the report button. Operational and detective. Notice how operational overlaps? That's intentional. CompTIA loves asking, HR verifies employment history. What control? Answer, operational, preventative. The person is doing the work. Finally, physical controls. Simplest definition, anything you can touch that protects the facility. Fences, walls, locks, doors, windows, security guards, badge readers, biometrics that require your physical presence, surveillance cameras, motion sensors, lighting, bollards that stop cars from ramming buildings. If you can kick it, it's physical. On the exam, they love physical controls because they are easy to visualize. If they say bollard, fence, guard, badge, camera, immediately think physical. But also think about the second label. What's its purpose? Physical is the most flexible in function. A fence is physical and preventive. It stops access. A sign that says premises under surveillance is physical and deterrent. It discourages without physically stopping. A CCTV camera that records and later you review footage after a theft, physical and detective. A fire suppression system that puts out a fire in the data center, physical and corrective. And a guard? A guard can be all of them. Guard standing at door, physical, operational, preventive, deterrent, detective. That's why CompTIA makes guards a favorite exam question. They can fit many categories. Always read what the guard is doing in the scenario. Let's pause and lock in the first classification matrix. I'm giving you a mental map. Technical. Think tools, software, firewalls, encryption, MFA, antivirus. Managerial. Think policies, documents, risk assessments, plans written by management. Operational. Think people doing daily security tasks, training delivery, log reviews, background checks. Physical. Think tangible barriers, fences, badges, cameras, guards. When you read a question, first ask, how is this implemented? Is it technology, paperwork, people action, or a physical object? Write that down. Then we add the second dimension. Now, the second classification, the much harder one, purpose or function. Why does this control exist in the timeline of an attack? Imagine a timeline from left to right. Before the attack happens, you want preventative controls that block it, deterrent controls that discourage the attacker from even trying, and directive controls that tell everyone what they must do. During or right after the attack, you want detective controls that find the attack. After detection, you want corrective controls that fix the damage, and sometimes compensating controls when your main control fails. This timeline approach is exactly how they test you. Which control identifies the issue after it occurred? That's detective. Preventive controls are your first line of defense. Their job is simple. Stop the incident before it happens. Block, deny, prevent. A firewall rule that denies traffic from a malicious IP. Preventive. MFA that prevents login even if password is stolen. Encryption that prevents reading data if stolen. A locked door. Security awareness training that prevents users from clicking phishing links. Patching that prevents exploitation of a vulnerability. For example, patching an unpatched VPN or application before it can be exploited. If the question asks, which control would prevent X? Look for the blocker, the thing that stops it before success. Deterrent is subtle, and CompTIA loves to confuse it with preventive. Deterrent does not physically stop. It psychologically discourages. The attacker can still do it, but chooses not to because of fear of getting caught. Warning banners at login that say unauthorized access is prohibited and monitored? Deterrent. A very visible CCTV camera with a flashing light? Deterrent. That sign you had on your credential harvesting slide about FIDO2 being best defense? The visible sign that says, "We use FIDO2" is deterrent. A security guard in uniform standing visibly? That presence deters. Ask yourself, does it physically block or does it make them think twice? If it makes them think twice, it's deterrent. Preventive blocks, deterrent discourages. Detective controls find the attack during or after it happened. They don't block, they alert. SIEM alerts, IDS alerts, antivirus logs, firewall logs, CCTV footage you review after a theft, audit reports that find policy violations. For example, endpoint detection and response detecting unusual behavior is detective. Your log management system seeing multiple failed logins is detective. Ask, does it identify? If it identifies, logs, alerts, monitors, scans, it's detective. But it does not fix anything. That is corrective's job. Memory hook. Detective finds. Both start with D. If it finds, it's detective. After detective finds it, corrective fixes it. Corrective controls restore the system to a secure state and fix the damage. Restoring from backup after a server failure or malware infection is corrective. Patching a vulnerability after it's found. Terminating a malicious process. Quarantining a device. Re-imaging a compromised machine. Applying a configuration change to fix a misconfiguration. If it fixes, restores, patches, or recovers, it's corrective. Memory hook. Corrective corrects. Both start with C. If it corrects or restores, it's corrective. This is your recovery phase. This is the most tested and most missed control on Security Plus, compensating controls. What is a compensating control? It's an alternative or workaround you use when the primary control is not possible, too expensive, or failed. Classic example. You have a legacy medical device that cannot be encrypted, and it stores sensitive patient data. You can't encrypt it. That's the ideal preventative control you want, but can't. So what do? You put it on an isolated network segment with a firewall in front that only allows the hospital app to talk to it. The firewall and network segmentation are compensating. They compensate for the lack of encryption. They provide alternative protection. On the exam, look for words like legacy system, cannot implement, alternative, workaround, temporarily. If you see legacy, 90% of the time, answer is compensating. Last by purpose, directive controls. These tell or direct people what to do. Policies, laws, regulations, procedures, guidelines, standards. Acceptable use policy tells you do not use company resources for personal business. GDPR tells you you must protect EU personal data. A procedure tells you to create a new firewall rule, you must get approval from the security architect. Directive controls direct behavior. They are almost always managerial by implementation because they are documents telling people what to do. Directive plus preventive is very common. AUP is directive and preventive. Now, the Grandmaster Matrix. Screenshot this. This is your exam cheat sheet. Memory hook. Remember how, with MTOP, my technical operations are perfectly managed. Managerial, technical, operational, physical. And why, with PDDCCD, police detectives don't catch cold criminals daily. Preventive, deterrent, detective, corrective, compensating, directive. Rows are how, columns are why. Firewall equals technical plus preventive. Warning banner equals technical plus deterrent. SIM equals technical plus detective. Backup restore equals technical plus corrective. Firewall in front of legacy system equals technical plus compensating plus preventive. Exam tip: when you see a question, map it to this matrix. Find how and why. That's your two answers for which to apply. Let's expose CompTIA's favorite trap, double labeling. This alone gets you 3 extra questions. Memory trick. Ask 2 questions. Can I touch it? That's how. Physical, technical. What does it do? That's why. Does it block, discourage, find, or fix? Block equals preventative. Discourage equals deterrent. Find equals detective. Fix equals corrective. Scenarios. Motion sensor light that alerts guard equals physical plus detective. You touch sensor, it detects. AUP says don't share passwords. Violators terminated equals managerial plus directive plus deterrent. It's a document that tells you what to do and threatens. Security guard checking IDs equals physical plus operational plus preventative. Exam trick. If question asks which 2 types, always pick one how and one why. Let's clear up the most confused trio on the exam. Directive versus deterrent versus preventive. This is a guaranteed trap. Directive tells people what to do. It's the rule itself. Acceptable use policy, GDPR, procedure. Preventive enforces that rule physically or technically. Firewall block, lock, MFA stops you. Deterrent discourages you from breaking the rules psychologically. Warning banner says you will be terminated. Visible camera makes you think twice. Memory hook. Directive says it, preventive stops it, deterrent scares you from trying. Example. Policy says do not share passwords equals directive plus managerial. Technical control that forces password complexity equals preventive plus technical. Sign that says sharing passwords leads to termination equals deterrent plus managerial. 3 different purposes, same topic. Quick fire quiz with memory hooks. Question 1. Firewall deny list blocks bad IPs. Technical plus preventative. Hook, block equals preventative. Question 2. Sign monitored by cameras. Physical plus deterrent. Hook, discourage equals deterrent. Visible sign discourages. Question 3. SOC analyst reviews logs daily. Operational plus detective. Hook, people finding equals detective. Question 4. Restore file server from backup after ransomware encryption to ransom note. Technical plus corrective. Hook, fix equals corrective. Question 5. Firewall in front of unpatched ICS that can't be patched. Technical plus compensating plus preventative. Hook, legacy equals compensating. This is your exam freebie. See words legacy, cannot, alternative, workaround equals compensating. Score 4 out of 5 equals ready for objective 1.1. That's objective 1.1 deep dive. 33 minutes, fully synced. Final memory hooks to take to the exam. How equals MTOP. My Tech Ops Perfect. Managerial, technical, operational, physical. Why equals PDDCCDD. Police detectives don't catch cold criminals daily. And compensating trigger words equals legacy, cannot, alternative, workaround, temporary. LCAWT. Legacy cannot afford working tech. Keep this master matrix handy. We will use it in every future domain. Next video, 1.2 covers CIA triad, AAA, zero trust control plane versus data plane, and deception with honeypots. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next objective. Bonus deep dive. Directive hierarchy. This is a guaranteed 1-point exam trap. Memory hook. LRSPPP. Laws rule standards. Policies provide procedures. Law on top. Then regulation, like GDPR or HIPAA. Then standard, like NIST or ISO 27001. Then policy, like acceptable use policy or information security policy. Then procedure, which is step-by-step how to do it. Exam tip. Higher overrides lower. If law says you must protect data, but your internal policy says you don't, law wins. If regulation says encrypt personal data, but standard says how, regulation wins. Question often, which is more general? Law is most general. Procedure is most specific. Remember hierarchy pyramid. Law at top, procedure at bottom. Bonus deep dive. 2 real compensating case studies. This is where students finally get it. Case 1. Legacy industrial control system that controls factory robots. From 2008, vendor out of business, cannot be patched, cannot install antivirus. Primary control, patching, fails. What do? You compensate. You put a firewall in front that only allows the factory app to talk to it on one port. You isolate it on its own VLAN, you add monitoring with IDS, you add physical lock on the server rack. Those together compensate for no patching. Case 2. Legacy customer database that cannot support encryption because the old app would break. Primary control, encryption, fails. Compensate with tokenization of credit cards, strong access control lists that only finance can query, data loss prevention that blocks export, and audit logs. Memory hook. See words legacy, cannot, too expensive, alternative, workaround, temporary. LCAWT. Answer is compensating. Bonus PBQ practice. Drag and drop matching, exactly like the exam performance-based questions. I will give you 8 scenarios. You pause and map how and why. 1. Motion sensor light alerts guard. Physical plus detective. 2. Acceptable use policy says don't share passwords. Violators terminated. Managerial plus directive plus deterrent. 3. HR background check before hiring. Operational plus preventive. 4. Firewall deny list blocks bad IPs. Technical plus preventive. 5. Sign says monitored by cameras. Physical plus deterrent. 6. SOC analyst reviews logs daily. Operational plus detective. 7. Restore file server from backup. Technical plus corrective. 8. Firewall in front of unpatched ICS that cannot be patched. Technical plus compensating plus preventive. If you got 6 out of 8, you are exam ready. Screenshot this PBQ slide and practice daily. How equals MTOP, Y equals PDDCCDD.